Hello and welcome to Sports Fan Entertainment, here to give you my top 5, top 5 worst NFL off seasons here on Sports Fan Entertainment. Now, a couple of days ago, I came on here and I gave you my best NFL off season, so it's only appropriate I give you my worst. And I had a much easier time making this list than that list, right? That list was a little difficult to make. There was a lot of teams that had strong NFL off seasons. This list was a lot easier, and I'm sure that some people are going to disagree with some of the teams on this list, particularly the fans of those teams, but you have to admit this when it comes to NFL off seasons. If you have a lot more output than input, that's a bad off season, because the default, the normal thing is to have a lot more input than output, right? You're going to draft a lot of players, you're going to re-sign or sign a lot of players more than you should lose players, right? I think we can agree on that. So with that said, let's get into my honorable mentions first, okay? And let's go ahead and say one that's not an honorable mention, actually, and that's the Houston Texans. A lot of people probably expected me, especially being a Tennessee Titans fan, to put them number 1, number 2, in the top 5 of this list even. No, they're not even in the top 5, not even honorably mentioned. I understand the DeAndre Hopkins trade was bad, okay, and that was pretty damn bad. I also understand that paying Laramie Tunsil $22 million a year was way too much money, considering the fact that the highest paid tackle next to him is, I want to say, Lane Johnson at $18 million. However, outside of that, the offseason was pretty good to me. I actually like the Brandon Cooks trade. To trade a late second-round pick for a guy that's a proven 1,000-yard wide receiver in this league and only 26 years old, let me tell you right now, only 2, maybe 3 wide receivers taken at that, I want to say, 57th pick and later in this draft, in this past 2020 draft, are going to be better than Brandon Cooks. Like, only 2, 3, maybe 4 wide receivers. So I like that trade for the Houston Texans, and they got a 4th with Brandon Cooks too. And they also got some decent pieces. Well, I don't love losing DJ Reader, but I thought their offseason was fine. I don't think they won the offseason. I don't think that they lost it either. But some honorable mentions, let's start with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And look, they don't really care. They never really have particularly strong off seasons anyway, at least when you're looking at it on the onset, right? When you're looking at it on paper, it just depends how their draft picks develop, right? So, but you look at free agency, they lost Javon Hargrave. That's a huge loss for them on the defensive line, and they didn't really replace him, so that's an L for me. They signed Eric Ebron. I don't really care. And then their draft pool was okay, but they drafted Chase Claypool. Is this guy going to be ready to go and play with Ben Roethlisberger? This is yet another wide receiver, a young wide receiver. They're paying with Ben Roethlisberger in addition to James Washington and Juju Smith-Schuster. I didn't love their offseason. Carolina Panthers did a lot of stuff, right? They got a lot of people in, new coaches, new players, new quarterback, a lot of new stuff. They lost a lot of stuff. Lost Luke Kuechly, lost Cam Newton, lost James Bradbury, lost Trey Turner, lost Darrell Williams, lost a lot of stuff. And to me, when you're having that much input and output, I don't love that offseason. They could end up being a good team, even a playoff team this year. Don't get me wrong. I just don't love seeing all that output, especially when we're talking about Luke Kuechly. Luke Kuechly is a huge loss. You look at the Chicago Bears, I don't like their offseason. I really didn't. Signing another tight end and Jimmy Graham. My God, can you guys stop signing stupid tight ends? Signing some other little fringe players. They lost not much, but they didn't gain much to me. They didn't have a first-round pick, and then with their first pick that they had in the second round, they took another damn tight end. I don't know why these people love taking tight ends, and then they traded for Nick Foles. They still don't have the quarterback situation solved or figured out at this point, so that was an L for me. The Vikings, honestly, didn't have a bad offseason to me. It could have been a lot worse. For them to lose Xavier Rhodes, for them to lose Linval Joseph, maybe that was last offseason, actually, but for them to also lose Mackenzie Alexander, lose Trey Waynes, and to still, though, to me, save it by drafting Justin Jefferson and Jeff Gladney, that saved their offseason to me. If they did not get the combination of those two or anything close to that, it would have been top 5 for the Minnesota Vikings. But to me, they got enough for me to say, okay, it wasn't that bad. And then the Las Vegas Raiders, didn't love it. Signing, all these little players that they keep doing this each and every year. And, they overpaid for Corey Littleton to me. The draft, they drafted 3 wide receivers in the first 3 rounds. Why? You literally just drafted Hunter Renfrow last year. And you drafted the worst of the top 3 wide receivers in Henry Ruggs. So, Raiders didn't do a great job, but not top 5. So, with that said, let's get into the top 5. And let's begin with number 5. And it was in the thumbnail, the Los Angeles Rams. That's right, the Los Angeles Rams come in at number 5 in terms of my worst NFL off seasons. Sean McVay, Les Snead, after making the Super Bowl, man, they just have not been able to keep this unit together, and they've made a lot of moves in an attempt to do that, but it just hasn't quite worked out. The major loss obviously has to be Todd Gurley, and I understand what a lot of people are going to say. Todd Gurley's done. Todd Gurley's finished. It doesn't matter that they lost Todd Gurley because he doesn't have much left in the tank anyway. Well, still, that was the guy that was the main driving force for you guys going to the Super Bowl. And I know that Jared Goff had damn near an MVP season that year too. But guess what happened when Todd Gurley struggled? Jared Goff struggled even more last season. And they didn't do anything to improve the interior of their offensive line. They didn't do much to help the losses that they had in terms of their defense. They lost Dante Fowler. They didn't do anything to really replace him. I know they got, I want to say Leonard Floyd, that they got in terms of a little, potential replacement there. But I'm not really buying into Leonard Floyd. He hasn't really developed in this league up to this point. Just a lot more output than input here. And they also got A'Shawn Robinson, who I actually like from the Detroit Lions. But for them to also trade away Brandon Cooks, lose Todd Gurley, lose Dante Fowler, lose Corey Littleton, lose Eric Weddle, lose Greg Zuerlein. I mean, don't forget about Greg Zuerlein. He's been one of the better kickers in the league. The Rams are definitely number 5 to me, and they could have been even higher on this list. So with that, we move on to number 4. And number 4 would actually be the Jacksonville Jaguars. And this might surprise a lot of you. Some of you may expect them to be number 1. But here's the thing that saved this Jacksonville Jaguars offseason to me. I loved their draft. I thought they killed the draft. C.J. Henderson with their 9th overall pick. Kalavon Chason with their 20th overall pick. And then Laviska Shenault with their 2nd round pick. And then a good defensive tackle in Devon Hamilton with the 3rd round pick. Now, they didn't particularly need another defensive tackle in there. Taven Bryan's been developing well. But hey, they took one, and I like David Hamilton out of Ohio State. So I thought they killed the draft. But you definitely look at the departures, and you see a lot of departures, right? They lost Goliath Campbell. They lost A.J. Boye. Marcel Davis is on the street, but they lost him too. They don't really need him, but he's still on the street. They traded away Nick Foles, which actually might have been good for them. And then you expect, he's not gone yet, but you expect that Yannick Ngakoue will not play this upcoming season for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So it definitely is a negative offseason. However, because it has such a good draft that's attributed to it, you can look back in seasons to come and say, overall, it was a net positive. But for right now, it's definitely a net negative for the Jacksonville Jaguars. But they definitely have a little nucleus here that they can continue to build around, for their upcoming draft as well, because God knows they're probably going to be picking high in the draft. And you look back at this draft and say, okay, this was an integral draft for us. And if Gardner Minshew pans out, last year's draft was also an integral draft for us. So the Jacksonville Jaguars come in at number 4. Number 3 would actually be the San Francisco 49ers. And this might surprise some of you, actually. I know 49er fans aren't going to want to hear this, but I did not love the 49ers offseason. You look at that man right there, DeForest Buckner. He was traded away, and yes, you got a first-round pick for him, but you got Javon Kinlaw with him, or with that pick, and he's not going to be as good as DeForest Buckner. Period. And DeForest Buckner was in his prime. And I know Eric Armstead had a fantastic year in 2019. DeForest Buckner was still your best defensive lineman. You should have kept him, period. I don't care that he wanted $20 million a year. You pay your best defensive lineman $20 million a year if he plays like DeForest freaking Buckner. That should have been one of the perennial players for the San Francisco 49ers, not only for the upcoming years, but I'd say for the next decade. I thought he was the number 1 priority for the 49ers for the next decade. I think he was a more priority than Jimmy Garoppolo, than Richard Sherman, than Joe Staley before he retired. I thought no one was more absolutely paramount for the 49ers than DeForest Buckner. And then there he goes. Okay, so I didn't understand that. Okay, then you also look at they traded away Matt Breida. They lost Joe Staley to retirement. And I know last year, Justin School out of Vanderbilt, anchored down my alma mater there, he came in and did a good job. But then they traded for Trent Williams. So Trent Williams should come in and do a good job replacing Joe Staley, but don't forget that what Joe Staley brought to that locker room in terms of leadership, in terms of his overall impact in the locker room, that will be missed as well. In the draft, they only had those 2 first-round picks, and they didn't have another pick until the 5th round. So it just wasn't enough for me. They definitely took a step back this offseason. Now, it may not be a large step back, but it's definitely a step back, if nothing else, than DeForest Buckner. That's a huge loss that was not really replaced. Kinlaw is going to do fine, maybe even pretty good. But DeForest Buckner will certainly be missing. You're going to see the production of Armstead go down again without DeForest Buckner by his side. So the 49ers come in at number 3 for me. Number 2 would be the Green Bay Packers. And everyone is clowning on the Green Bay Packers these days, and kind of deservedly so. Their offseason was pretty garbage. Okay, so let's look at free agency first before we obviously get to the draft. Now, free agency was a negative. It wasn't a total obvious negative, but it was a negative, right? So they lost Brian Bulaga and they signed Ricky Wagner. Brian Bulaga is better than Ricky Wagner, right? Ricky Wagner at this point is becoming a little bit of a journeyman right tackle, and he's not awful by any means, but he's certainly not good at this point, right? So that's the replacement at right tackle. You look at their inside linebacker position. They lost Blake Martinez and they get Christian Kirksey. Again, Martinez is better than Kirksey, so they downgraded there. They lose Geronimo Allison, who, had a promising 2018 season, got injured, did nothing in 2019, and they got Devin Funchess, who did even less in 2019. Now, Devin Funchess is probably better than Allison, but not by much. We're not even sure if Devin Funchess is going to be in the league at this point in a couple years, the way his career is going. They lost Jimmy Graham, but I don't really care much about Jimmy Graham, but they didn't really replace him until the draft anyway, so it still is a loss. They lost Kyler Fackrell, who, yes, had a disappointing 2019, but he was a rotational pass rusher for you. And that's about it, right? So free agency was definitely a loss. And then you get to the draft and here's my problem with this Green Bay Packers draft. To me, you still have Aaron Rodgers at the helm. And he just led you to a 13-3 season. You guys should not have been 13-3, okay? You guys were a 10-win team at best, but somehow you guys won 13 games. You still have a Super Bowl window with Aaron Rodgers. He's still only 36 years old. And all of us that have watched Aaron Rodgers over the past decade plus have felt, man, that looks like a quarterback that should win 2, 3, 4 Super Bowls. He has that talent. He has that ability. The only reason he has it is because the Packers can't surround him with talent. And with the first-round pick, with wide receivers available, they don't surround him with a wide receiver. They take a quarterback to replace Aaron Rodgers, who still has at least 2 years left. I'd bet on 4. I would bet on 4 years left. I'd bet on Jordan Love never playing for the Green Bay Packers unless if they just really force him in there. I feel like Rodgers still has 3, 4 years left in him because remember, he sat for 3 years to start his career. So why would he not have 3, 4 more years left in him at 36 years old? Doesn't make any sense to me. So they're getting nothing out of their first-round pick this year. And then the next pick they take a running back in A.J. Dillon. The Packers finally have a good running game. Why are they taking a running back now? When they need a wide receiver, need a wide receiver. It made no sense to me. Look, we just saw the Buffalo Bills trade their first-round pick for Stephon Diggs. And we saw the Texans trade DeAndre Hopkins for a second. And the Brandon Cooks got traded for a second. And meanwhile, the Packers are taking Jordan Love with their first-round pick. Now, maybe Jordan Love ends up being a franchise quarterback. We'll see about that. He looks a lot like DeShone Kizer to me, and that's not a good thing. Okay, and Packers fans should know a lot about that. Green Bay Packers come in at number 2 and missing out on their Super Bowl window without a doubt to me. I think now there's no way they're going to win a Super Bowl in this Aaron Rodgers window to me with the way they blew this offseason. But number 1, worst offseason this year has to go to the New England Patriots, man. It was an awful offseason for the New England Patriots. And I don't mind bashing Bill Belichick. I know a lot of people are afraid to do that. I don't mind that at all. This was an awful offseason. Not only did they lose Tom Brady, but they also lost a number of contributors on their defense. And look, if you want to tell me that the Patriots can still be a good team next year because they still have this sound defense, because they still have this strong defense, then I'm actually willing to listen to you. But then they lose Kyle Van Noy. Then they lose Jamie Collins. Then they lose Elandon Roberts. And I'm like, oh my God, those are 3 integral linebackers for this Patriots defense. Now, luckily, they stopped Dante Hightower in that unit, but those are 3 significant losses. Danny Shelton had been a good run support for them. He's gone as well. Duron Harmon had been a good safety for them. He's gone. So you're going to continue to rely on Devin McCourty and Jason McCourty, who are good, but are getting up there in age in the secondary when Duron Harmon was the actual young one at that unit, relative to them, and actually, had more potential to grow or at least be a starting safety again. That didn't make much sense to me. Okay, now they traded away Rob Gronkowski for something, which I liked. But overall, when you're losing Brady, when you're losing those 3 linebackers, they lost Steven Gostkowski. Now, he's not good anymore, but they replaced him with some alt-right kicker. This guy's apparently he's alt-right. He had some crazy tattoo he's talking about removing. He looks like a clown. His college stats weren't even that impressive. And they had all these draft picks. A lot of them they traded for 2021. They didn't even take a pick in the first round. And the first guy they took was a no-name guy, Kyle Duggar, from Lenore something, some crazy college. Who is this guy? It was just bizarre stuff from the New England Patriots, and it just seems like a rebuild. That's what they're preparing for, and they're planning to start Jarrett Stidham this upcoming season, or maybe Brian Hoyer. But I don't know how you can leave this offseason and not say without a doubt that the New England Patriots had the worst offseason in 2020. So with that said, those are my top 5 worst NFL offseasons. What are yours? Comment down below. I want to know. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, comment, and most importantly, to subscribe. And until next time, this has been MJ of Sports Fan Entertainment, and I'm out. See you all later.